That movie was the most epic thing ever. Oh, I'm sorry there, class. I was just texting a friend of mine telling her how epic a movie that I saw was, and actually that kind of relates to what we are talking about today, which is the epic. So we're going to be delving into what the epic hero is by taking a closer look at Homer's Odyssey. So let's start with what is an epic. So an epic is basically a really long poem and it chronicles the life of a huge figure who is well respected in society because he embodies the values and traditions of a culture. In this case, we have Odysseus, who is a larger than life hero and embodies the values of perseverance, persistence, bravery, strength, and valor. And we're going to take a look at the qualities of what makes a traditional epic. So let's start with the characteristics of an epic, and there are 5 main characteristics. Of these characteristics is this first one, and the hero, like I said earlier, is an important historical figure in society. So Odysseus, being the one who saved his place from the Trojan War, is a well-respected figure in the land of Ithaca. But before he gets home, he has to be sure that he has fought these obstacles, gone through all these trials, passing through all these trials and trying to get to his final destination. So that's part of what embodies the hero. And while he's on these tasks, he goes through these different settings. So another quality of an epic is the grand setting. So as we've read so far, there's a setting of a stormy sea, there's the setting of the king's palace, and there's also the setting of the supernatural, as we've seen in the land of the dead, and these spirits coming out from beneath to meet Odysseus and help him on his journey. And there's also this quality, which is number 3, of the hero doing great deeds in battles and quests, and we can see this in Odysseus' character. And like we've said before, Odysseus has a dual kind of personality where he's conflicted by his desire, his deep inner desire to go home. But he also knows that he has his duty as a hero to fight all these monsters and all these obstacles before he can finally reach his destination. So a great deed that we could see is him making sure that his men arrive home safely from the Lotus Eaters episode, where they're all under this trance and they ate these flowers, and Odysseus knows that they're under this trance, and he tries his best to get them home. Number 4 is that there's also an intervention from the supernatural. And basically that means that there's involvement upon the gods. So we see gods such as Cyclops' father, Poseidon, wishing ill will upon Odysseus. There's also intervention and assistance from the goddess Athena. We see Zeus getting involved, Calypso, and the list goes on in the story of the Odyssey. And one thing that you've noticed while reading so far is that the story is told in very elevated language. It's very grandiose, it's very heightened, there's a lot of emotion and imagery and also repetition. So again, these are the 5 characteristics of an epic. Moving on, we also have the conventions of an epic. And conventions basically relate to what is shared between these long poems that were written back in the ancient times that made them so popular and so well known. So here are some of the characteristics, conventions that were put into these epic poems. One is invocation, and invocation basically refers to someone calling for a plea for help, or a spirit calling to a spirit to tell a story for inspiration. And we learned this right off the bat when we started reading the Odyssey, where there's a call to the Muse, one of Zeus's daughters, for help in inspiring the story of the Odyssey. Number 2 is that the action also begins in medias res. And that's a fancy word to mean that the story actually starts in the middle of things. So just as the Odyssey started, we didn't know what happened in the Trojan War. We actually kind of started after we learned that Odysseus was the one who started the Trojan War. Another key convention is that the story flashes back and forth between events that happened in the past and move back to the current part of the story. So here we have parts of the story where Odysseus is talking about his adventures with Cyclops, and then the Lotus Eaters, and then Calypso, and then it goes on and on and on. And it just keeps jumping back and forth. There's also epic similes, and we should know that a simile is a comparison using like or as, but an epic simile just takes it up a notch. An epic simile basically does use like or as, but compares it to even more ornate things and makes it very elaborate and makes it very visual, which we can see in the episode of the Cyclops, where we hear the onomatopoeia in the eyelash and lid were seared, the pierce ball hissed broiling, the roots popped. And those are all examples in which the language is kind of elevated and repeated. And that kind of links to number 5, where we also have the heavy use of repetitions, including epithets. And epithets are kind of short phrases that are attached to figures to help the poet remember the story more. So an example of an epithet would be the son of Laertes for Odysseus, or the raider of cities for Odysseus. Those are all kind of conventions that were placed in an epic to make it more memorable and easier to carry on over the years so that the story would be retold over and over again. So, in addition, we have the characteristics of an epic hero. And just like in any culture, we value heroes because they are bigger than life figures. And they value the culture and the time period. We consider that the hero undertakes a journey. He also overcomes obstacles and experiences human emotions. So this is kind of tying into what we've already said about Odysseus, where he has this human trait of having a strong desire to go home, and also having this heroic quality of being able to fight off monsters and deal with the divine intervention that goes on in this journey. There's also the quality of living on after death. So the sense of immortality after the hero passes away, he or she is remembered by those who are present and live on by retelling his story. So tying it back to the beginning of how I introduced the epic and how the epic is used in our colloquial speech every day, we can kind of see the Odyssey being super epic and being this new movie that we can envision, having awesome qualities, having these cool qualities, but also knowing that there's a tradition, there's a history behind how the epic poem was created. And I hope this was helpful for everyone. It was nice creating this lecture for class, and I hope you guys learned something from this video. Thank you.